Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of video game news. Today is Friday, May 24th, 2024. I am running into issues, unfortunately, with OBS, and I'm on I think the second to newest version of it, and this probably has more to do with Windows 10 than it even does OBS, but OBS is running into problems with it, certainly. Where it just loses the settings as far as my virtual microphone setup, which is set up in such a way to always look for my Blue Yeti microphone and not change in any way if Windows changes, and yet it still does change when Windows changes. That's the ridiculousness of it. By default, OBS will just go with your default microphone stuff, but Windows then changes what the defaults are sometimes. And then Windows 10 is just all about changes. Let's just talk about that for a second. We are closer than we ever have been before to the point where I think I may, even for my gaming PC, have to jump over to either Chimera OS, which would be what I would want to experiment with, but it's going to take a lot of work, frankly, to... Like, I can't really afford to build a new computer, which is what I'd like to do if I'm going to put a whole new operating system on it. But yeah, moving completely away from Windows. And why are we closer today than ever before? For that being a necessity, not just for me, but for a large percentage of gamers, if not every gamer. Well, Windows 10 support has been announced in that Microsoft is going to stop supporting Windows 10 in about 12 months is what they've announced. Now, it is fair to point out that Microsoft said similar things for previous operating systems, and then they just pushed it back and they pushed it back and they pushed it back. But you can't guarantee that. And yeah, without the constant bug fixes that Windows in particular, but operating systems in general, need, an operating system is going to become incredibly vulnerable to being hacked, often by no action of the user at all. Somebody just did a virtual machine experiment with Windows 95, and within 5 minutes of just installing and booting up Windows 95 and connecting it to the internet, people had hacked it and tried to turn it into a botnet because it's just so incredibly vulnerable. Which is also worth pointing out that Microsoft has never announced the shutdown of its previous operating system, it feels like, as early as this. If there was a Windows 12 already out, it would make a lot more sense for them to announce that they're going to get rid of Windows 10 and stop supporting it. But no, there's only Windows 11, and Windows 11 is a nightmare. It's completely different looking. You might as well be learning a Linux operating system at that point. The only thing that Windows 11 may still have going for it is that it may have legacy code to still play some old games. But with Proton, with Wine just getting better and better, it's really questionable whether any of that matters. And then certainly when I think about the other software I use on a day-to-day basis, it's OBS, pretty much. Like, I have some other software that I might have to find or learn some new software to replace, but it wouldn't be much. Everything, for the most part, can be done these days with just websites, and so obviously Chimera OS and any Linux is going to have a browser that'll be either Firefox or Chrome based, and so you could go with that, Chromium based. You might have some specific hardware, but if you do have specific hardware that doesn't have Linux drivers or work just out of the box with Linux, it's probably a very old piece of hardware not worth really keeping. I have no idea what card I should be playing here. Are any of these field spells? Let's take the field spells. Field spells tend to be more useful. So, yeah. It definitely feels like it is a case where there's more reason than ever to start thinking about going to full Chimera OS. And honestly, if the Steam Deck hadn't come out, I would be suggesting Ubuntu or Linux Mint, probably Linux Mint more than anything. And I suppose there's a Linux Mint variant that runs KDE that you might consider, but with SteamOS and Chimera OS trying to be similar to SteamOS for general computers instead of just the Steam Deck, the hope would be that everything can just be put off, and that SteamOS might come out itself for all computers instead of being hyper focused just for the Steam Deck and Valve hardware. But yeah, at a certain point, if SteamOS is targeting every single computer game being compatible if it's installed on a AMD 64 type computer instead of the slightly weirder chipset and setup that the Steam Deck has, there really is no need for Windows. Windows has also irritated me in that there is a recovery partition issue where for some reason my Windows recovery partition was not big enough for an update to install, so the update was just failing over and over again, but it just pops up the text for a second and disappears. So I was really having a hard time just trying to figure out what it is. There's just no direct link to the log to show which update is failing or how to rectify it. And yeah, the way I had my Windows set up is like user account controls was disabled, because back when Windows 10 first came out, that was really annoying, particularly when you're installing software and setting up a computer. And to use the Microsoft Store, you have to have user account control enabled, so I had to enable that to just install the Minecraft launcher to get around to collecting the 15th anniversary skins in the Minecraft Bedrock launcher that they're giving away, and the maps and other things they're giving away. I think Minecraft Bedrock only works on Windows 10 and Windows 11 and through the Microsoft Store, and it really is just a Trojan horse to get you to do that. And I don't think Bedrock's a particularly good way to play Minecraft. I really don't believe anybody should be playing Minecraft Bedrock. If you have a computer, you should be playing Minecraft Java, and still though, it seems like you need the newer launcher for the Microsoft Store for the Minecraft Java to be able to actually connect to servers and play online. But Bedrock is the version of Minecraft with the marketplace and microtransactions being shoved into it, and really is just yet another example of Microsoft trying to monetize or trying to do something with Minecraft and making it worse. So, suffice it to say, Microsoft has found a way to irritate me. Oh, I should have put it in that spot, shouldn't I? Over the past couple days. Otherwise, I'm not really doing too much other than playing Fallout New Vegas, which, yeah. Fallout New Vegas definitely feels like you kind of need a walkthrough guide for the companions. It definitely feels like you probably should have a walkthrough guide even on your first playthrough with the main stories in the quest. I feel like I failed 2 or 3 quests unfairly and had to really cheat to not fail a 3rd quest unfairly without really knowing that that was going to happen. There are, as best as I can tell, it feels like there's a need to join the bad guys, effectively, Caesar's Legion, and do all of their quests until a certain point when they say the game is about to end, and then turn around and do all the quests for the NCR and Mr. House. And you definitely want to do Mr. House and talk to Mr. House very early in the game, which means you want to get into New Vegas very early in the game. And yeah, it's just really, really easy to screw up the order in which you should do quests, and it's really not a game open to just role-playing. And I'd argue most Bethesda games aren't really open to role-playing. Not in that way that you could on a tabletop game, where you'd have a dungeon master or something figuring out where they want to go and how they want to improv on your role-playing decisions. Even today, with the push of AI, I've severely questioned whether you could make an artificial intelligence that would be able to improv based on true role-playing options. And a lot of it is, it just feels incredibly rigid. As far as what is in the game and what they, and that rigidity doesn't lead towards what I would want it to lead to. Like, it doesn't lead towards good content. Now, I've said this before, maybe in the pre-records, maybe in the live streams, but it's just kind of pointless to have shopkeepers walking around and finding beds and having to find them in their beds, and then having toilets in every single building when there's nothing in the toilets. Meanwhile, just having a shop in every location is actually missing, and having unique items at the end of every dungeon and labyrinth, for the little dungeons and labyrinths that exist here, is missing. I did find a vault in Fallout New Vegas called Vault 11, and I don't want to spoil anything too much here, but at the end of it there is one of those animations that you really should see a lot more. Just, it is a projector projecting an animation on the wall, there's voice acting, it sounds interesting, and just like it's just talking to me and doing the voice acting around it. And boy, when I hit that section, I'm like, oh, this is what this whole game should have been, is that it should have that Fallout feel from Fallout 3, and it should let's see what happens if we do this. No, that didn't work. I was hoping this would have gotten stronger every time somebody attacked. No. So yeah, it stands completely out like a different type of experience. Now, I would say Vault 11, still try not to spoil anything, has major problems in that there are just no characters alive willing to talk. There are actually quite a few audio logs to listen to in Vault 11 when there's just like no audio logs at all in any of the other vaults I've seen in New Vegas. But there's still a lot of text on terminals, a lot of reading, and I'm just not willing to put up with that 100 hours into it. And so I definitely suspect that Vault 11 actually is DLC, and it's just like a little extra Vault DLC that doesn't seem like it really connects to anything else, which is the general idea of what vaults should be in Fallout, is that this would be a labyrinth that is effectively going to be its own bespoke separate dungeon that ideally you would come out with something either entertaining from experiencing it, but also ideally you would have a specific item, little memento to take with that, or at least you'd get a decent amount of XP. In New Vegas, Vault 11, I don't believe gives you an actual quest. I don't believe it gives you a significant amount of XP. It does give me a little bit of entertainment, though, so I am so I will at least appreciate that. Still have no idea what the move here is. So yeah, and I think that's pretty much all I have to say about Fallout New Vegas. The vast majority of the other content that I've done in the past, I would say close to 6 to 8 hours of gameplay, has been just trying to avoid failing missions. I spent probably an hour in total in 2 separate instances being over encumbered and just walking from point A to point B, being over encumbered. A lot of collecting of vendor trash, probably not for good reasons, just trying to do some crafting. All of the crafting recipes I have are pretty terrible. So, yeah. I have recognized that the gun modding and handcrafting bullets with the perk to handcraft bullets will significantly increase the amount of damage you're doing with your bullets, and I suspect if you're playing even on normal, let alone hardcore mode, you would fairly quickly realize that you need that amount of damage. But it really breaks the game completely to have Gunrunner's Arsenal as a DLC and have guns that are doing 200, 300 damage per second when your default Fallout 3 type weapon might be doing 10, 20, 30 damage per second. It severely limits the number of the guns you can actually use, and modding doesn't really make up for that enough. So, yeah. It definitely just feels to me like Obsidian wanted to experiment with making custom bullets and modding guns as probably a sales pitch that they made to ZeniMax as the publisher. and then they effectively got forced into I'm just gonna take this. I thought I was gonna summon that, but no such luck. But yeah, I lost my train of thought there as far as what I was even talking about as far as Fallout New Vegas. But yeah, I spent a significant amount of time most of yesterday just wandering around, accomplishing very little. Let's go ahead and see if we can bring this one back. I severely question whether there actually is any more locations. I've already found 125 locations. I'd be surprised if there's barely 150 locations in all of New Vegas. The other element that Obsidian added was the survival cooking mechanic, but there's no companion that lets you cook or helps you cook, so you'd have to find a campfire to cook, and there's no campfire or oven that you could use to cook inside the one house the game gives you. One thing Starfield certainly could have had on its side is the fact that Starfield's home base almost certainly is the ship, so the home base and house is coming with you, so you can be an OCD collector of resources and drop it off in the ship. But for Skyrim, Elder Scrolls games, and for Fallout games, you need multiple choices of houses. Fallout 3 does the housing way better. You have at least a couple places where you can have a house and multiple ways in which you can decorate the house. There's no real decoration in New Vegas of the house you get. You just add upgrades that give you a little bit of benefit. So you add like a workbench or a trunk to drop items in. The jury rigging perk is something I think you should take much earlier than I did, because it lets you take weapons and armor from different types of classes and use it to repair other weapons and armors of similar classes. It's not as good as like you could take a light cloth outfit from a civilian and use it to repair a Brotherhood of Steel power armor, but you can certainly take cheap, repetitive pieces of clothing and use them to repair more expensive things. You can also, unfortunately, do the opposite without the game warning you at all. And as you improve the condition of most of the clothes, which you're never actually going to wear, there's way too many outfits in the game. There's way too much just legacy items in general in Fallout New Vegas. But as you increase the conditions, you get a higher value that you could theoretically sell it to if you can find a shopkeeper that has the caps. but that whole system is effectively broken too, because most shopkeepers have at most 2, maybe 3,000 caps, and some pieces of armor are going for 5,000, 6,000 caps. So yeah, then you end up doing a whole bunch of manipulation in which you're trying to buy every single item from the shopkeepers that might not take as much weight as the item you're selling, or might usually, if you buy like drugs, they don't take up any weight anyways. Let's see, what can we summon? But the whole barter system really is just generally broken, because they don't even have enough they really don't have even enough for oh, I lost my train of thought. I'm not doing good today, obviously. They don't have enough bullets, is what I was going to say. Yeah. And it is possible you will run out of bullets. Particularly, I think, if you're playing at higher difficulty levels. I imagine you would just need more bullets there. And you can certainly lose bullets crafting bullets, because it is not a 1-to-1 ratio, so crafting more powerful bullets also can be an issue. Summon this, I guess. Set this. Let's go ahead and activate this. So yeah, anyways, I guess that's all I really want to even say about Fallout New Vegas. 100 hours in, I definitely feel like we are going to I'm going to spend a lot of time still just finishing the last few quests and not have much enthusiasm around it. And that's not even to talk about like the DLC. Like that, the DLC itself is going to be hopefully a lot better quality content, and so maybe I can have a different feeling on it. Otherwise it's just going to be more of the same. I am very much confused as to why people seem to like New Vegas. Yeah, it just really doesn't make any sense. One of the things I guess I could say about Vault 11 that also makes it feel like a much better experience is that Vault 11 was crawling with rats and small creatures like that. Not rad roaches. I still expect to really see more rad roaches, and I've only seen a few in the game, like maybe 3 or 4. And I think that may be because I'm playing on very easy. But yeah, it definitely seems to me like there should be more small creatures that you can shoot and kill and get XP on. All the other vaults you wander around, and yes, there are enemies in them, but they tend to be fewer in numbers, maybe a little bit stronger than they should be. I don't really expect to run into humans in vaults, or human-like armored characters that take a minute to kill each. I expect to see that kind of content outside in the wasteland, and that's not what I'm saying. I happened to be flipping channels, and I was watching just a minute or so of Let's Make a Deal. I don't waste my time watching TV much at all. I do waste my time, however, watching streaming stuff. Like, I'm still watching Akuma Game on Amazon Prime, and I'm watching another Korean drama called, I think, Heartbeat, which is about a vampire who's incredibly childish. Romance drama type Korean drama. Silly. But yeah. I flipped over and saw Let's Make a Deal, and there was this lady on it saying she has a very large video game collection. And then certainly that got my ears perked, because I too have a somewhat large video game collection, although inherently I chose the path less taken on my video game collection, in that I was looking to collect more memorabilia and things that likely would be thrown away, toys, clothing, perishable food, things like that, shampoo. Like, it was kind of obvious that for people who would have been collectors of what was originally Nintendo, and most of the things I have on Nintendo, almost all of it is, maybe 2 or 3 things aren't. But it was kind of obvious even then that having an NES, or having every single type of the Game Boy, particularly the Game Boys, once they started getting crazy and you'd have 12 different shell colors of plastic with the exact same hardware on the inside, there definitely was fairly obvious that those collectors would get that. So yeah, I think Wayne Brady is kind of a video game fan. Inherently, I think everybody is of a certain age, and so they seem to spend quite a lot more time talking about video games than I would have thought. But all she kind of listed was NES, Game Boys, Super NES, Wii's. She said all the types of Wii's, or all the types of Wii U's. I don't know if there ever was any limited editions for Wii U's. There may very well have only been one. But then Wayne Brady goes, "What about the ColecoVision?" And she just goes silent, because she doesn't have anything before the NES. Which, in fairness, if you are going to be a systems collector, you probably have not crossed over to the elite level of system collecting until you do have something pre-NES, or you're going to many different regions. If you told me you had the NES in box for the release in like Europe or South America, if that would be more surprising. But yeah, or even having like a Famicom in box would be really valuable for a systems collector. But yeah, if your entire collection really was just that you had a lot of money and you could go to Toys R Us when Toys R Us was existing and buy every single system from Nintendo, you're doing good. You're better than non-collectors, certainly. Particularly if you've got it like in box and in good condition. I think mint is probably asking too much for most game consoles, but yeah, there's also a lot of people who will have collections, and I don't want to be a gatekeeper and elitist and say your game collection isn't a game collection, because you could really just have an Xbox Series X and a PS5 and say you have a game collection. You could just have an Xbox Series S and say you have a game collection if you want to. I don't want to be exclusionary, but the true collectors are going to have to go out of their way to get rarer items. I heard of somebody still having their PS2 and still playing it. That's very believable. It's, I think, very doable that you can have a PS1, PS2, and it would still be playable and work, and those discs still will work. There's no online servers or check there. I've heard of people have NESs that still work, which in part that's, I imagine, due to the fact that the NES doesn't have any capacitors or batteries that are really likely to fail. But yeah. But it is intriguing to see how much gaming has become a mainstream, in that you have fairly old adults, young adults, but not that young, talking about video games in a respectable manner, in a respected manner. It's not just, oh, you're a nerd, oh, you're a geek, why don't you go out and date, and I bet you don't have a girlfriend type nonsense that you would have heard 5 years or previous even. And you definitely would have heard that. And even in that, Wayne Brady drew a line and said that his friend, or whatever, his subordinate actor, was a nerd because he actually built his computer, whereas Wayne Brady just had somebody build him a computer. So the act of actually building a computer, which is honestly older than gaming, has failed to gain mainstream attraction, which is fair enough. Like, there are definitely still situations where I'd encourage people to build a computer, but for the price, Steam Deck in particular, and I gotta keep beating this drum. I wish I was getting paid by Valve to promote the Steam Deck as much as I sing its praises, particularly since how little I've actually used it. But yeah, $600 for an OLED screen Steam Deck is going to be a lot cheaper than trying to build your own computer. Of course, you may not have that same amount of storage or space or speed that you would want, or you may not have the highest of graphics cards, but all of that may not really be that useful. I would still argue the Steam Deck is a little underpowered in its 1280 by 800 resolution. I would like it to be 1920 by 1080, 1080p resolution. I imagine there are people who would love a 2K version and a 4K version, but on that tiny screen that you would squeeze in 7.5 inches or less, 2K is kind of ridiculous. And so that's where the majority of your money would go for paying for or building a computer, is that you're targeting a TV or monitor that can do 2K or 4K, at least in theory. So you're putting a much more expensive, much more powerful graphics card in your computer for that. As far as CPU and RAM, yeah, I doubt you're going to significantly see a big difference unless you're rendering video for more powerful CPU and more RAM. But you do need more CPU and RAM compared to the Steam Deck. If you're going to do the higher resolutions, you have to make your CPU balance to a 2K or 4K or even an 8K system. But most of that is going to be fairly overkill for most people, I would imagine. Yeah. Monday in the United States is Memorial Day. I will go ahead and mention that just to say my schedule is not planning to change any My schedule is fairly inconsistent anyways, but yeah. I will be streaming on Monday. Or at least I intend to. I was speaking about game collections. Here we can see YouTube Gaming showing 2 of the rarest GameCubes ever made. Yep, which... Let's see. Yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting that apparently they made one of each of these. This one seems to be in German. Do I want to play another game? What I desperately want here is a quick disconnect to just... Nope. You know what? Through losses, I've made it to this point. I don't care to go any further. I certainly could go further and get pathetically small amounts of gems, but that is not fun. Meanwhile, the progress here to get to platinum, we are running out of time since today is May 24th to actually get up to platinum, which would mean if I don't get to platinum, I would fall down to silver instead of gold, and then I probably would just fall down more and more. And inherently that probably is going to be what happens as I'm playing less and less of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that I am just going to start falling down lower and lower in ranked. Which I don't know if I really need to play ranked at all. I think I do, but I'm not 100% sure. So I did want to talk about this. The 15-year anniversary sale is still going on. You can get Java and Bedrock. Again, I don't think Bedrock is worth anything as a deluxe collection for $20. Or you can save yourself $5 and just get the launcher, which is free really, and Bedrock, which isn't worth anything in Java. What you get with the deluxe edition is 1,600 coins for the microtransactions, 5 maps, 5 persona items, 3 emotes, 3 skin packs, and 1 texture pack. All of which I imagine you could just download and install for free in the Java edition. But there's another issue that needs to be highlighted, particularly when you're talking Minecraft. This is a game little kids love, and a lot of little kids have grown up not even playing Minecraft so much on their Nintendo Switches more than anywhere else, but they've grown up watching other YouTubers play Minecraft. And you cannot gift this game to any of those kids that are under 14. Because to gift a game, you have to send it to an email address. Legally, pretty much in the United States, to have a email address, and if you're under 14, it's not allowed, because Google, Yahoo, Hotmail just can't track people in that way. Can't track kids under 14. So you're inherently tying kids in their game accounts to an email for no reason. We need to rethink the idea of having an account. In this case, it would have been a Microsoft account, without requiring emails. And even Microsoft really wouldn't be for that, because Microsoft also can't make an account for people who are under 14 and track them. You can make accounts, but they just won't do it because it's 100% not profitable for any company to give kids under 14 special accounts. so that wouldn't be tracked. The best case scenario, and it's a terrible case scenario, would be that you could make your own email server and your own email accounts, but that won't work because of spam issues. You could probably do it, but it's so technical, and it would look fairly unprofessional. And it really, I think the United States Post Office, if they were allowed to, should be able to give out some kind of email type account to every citizen. But they're legally not allowed to do anything online or offer any new services at all. Because people trying to crush the U.S. postal system passed laws. Politicians did that. And they are just recently raising the prices of stamps once again. And eventually it will be $5 to mail a piece of mail. Yeah. So here's Bedrock versus Java comparisons. So neither one has split screen multiplayer, which may not be true for some of the console versions. But the Bedrock version does have crossplay with the Nintendo Switch, PS5, and mobile. So we know all the console versions really are running the Bedrock version. There is no Minecraft Marketplace, which I would say that's a positive for the Java version. There's no controller or touch support for the Java version, which that is the one thing that feels a little off when you are playing Minecraft, but inherently Minecraft is not designed particularly well to use a controller, even the Bedrock version. To say there is no downloadable content for the Java version is just straight up a lie. There is plenty of DLC downloadable content from modders, and so they are inherently splitting this and saying mods are not downloadable content. Where do you get mods? You download them. What are mods? They're content. You can run your own servers, but you can't have, quote, official featured multiplayer servers on the Java version. But then you can have realms, which are rented out servers. Apparently they're saying you can host your own server on Bedrock version. I question if that's the same experience as it is on Java, though. No achievements and trophies if you care about that. And then there's no parental controls with a Microsoft account on Java. And apparently there's no ray tracing on Java, which that's the first I had heard of that, and I'm pretty sure that's not accurate either. So on the face of it, the sales pitch definitely makes it seem like Bedrock is a much better version to have. In reality, I still think if you were to sample enough YouTubers, you would find that there is the vast majority of them are still playing Java versions. Just for the fact that the Java versions would be the mods and content in which people would would release the newest of new content. It is kind of crazy that 15 years later we still are talking about Minecraft. And Minecraft numbers, and Minecraft's not on Steam, so the sales numbers are uncertain as far as where it would be as far as the 24-hour peak or all-time peak of players. We could only possibly guess it's somewhere above Terraria's numbers. Moving on, DOSBox Pure's core, DOSBox Pure core has been added to the Steam version of RetroArch. This is a hard fork of the multi-platform MS-DOS emulator. It was built by Cyraven in 2020 specifically for RetroArch LibRetro and implements advanced features like save states and on-screen keyboard, highly customizable controller setup, and rewinding. DOSBox Pure aims for simplicity and ease of use. I think there probably is a different DOSBox or DOS emulator that also might exist for RetroArch, but no guarantee for certain that it is on the Steam version. Yeah, I imagine there still are some cores that aren't on the Steam version, but I imagine there's a decent number of them that are. Now here's the problem, I used my own ability to negate my own character's ability. I'm hoping here that he would just give up. I'm not sure we're going to be so lucky. Yeah, and this needs to be the last game for today. At this rate, I'm still just playing an hour of Yu-Gi-Oh! At the beginning of these streams, and the thought was to play a little bit less. But I am actually motivated here to try and get up to Platinum. That'll save me work in the long run. But I probably would have to play off screen, too. Like, I need probably 9 victories in a row, which is unlikely to happen, so even more than 9 victories. Let's activate this. So, GameDeveloper.com has an obituary for the Judgment actor Akira Nakao. He passed away at age 81. He played the mentor figure Ginda in the Judgment series and was previously appeared in Godzilla movies throughout the 90s and early 2000s. So, yeah. We don't get a lot of Japanese obituaries. There probably should be a lot more of them, come to think of it. So, do I have enough here to summon what I want to summon? 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I barely do. One would assume at 81 he died of what would be called natural causes. Yeah, it says he had heart failure, which I guess we technically call that natural causes. Wow. Apparently I just finished the practical exam. So Inflict battle damage. So we have to go back to the menu to unlock this. And we'll do the academic exam later, and I imagine this will just be a whole bunch of more things you have to do. I bet this just goes on forever, and that they've created a system here which is a different level up system than just the basic level up system they had originally, which is just winning. Now I do have 40 days left on this, so there's a decent chance we would get all the way to 100, but maybe not. Yeah. One of the things certainly is that I just don't have Master Duel installed on my phone. It takes up too much space. So it's not like when I'm sitting in a waiting room or in the bathroom or something that away from my computer, or my computer is doing something else. It's not like there's an easy way to launch Master Duel and play even if I wanted to. Alright, let's focus on the news. Neil Druckmann, Last of Us director, says AI will push the boundaries of storytelling. Says the technology has ethical issues but will revolutionize content, which is to say he doesn't care about the ethical issues. Progress at any cost is the name of the religion they're bowing down to when they push and talk about AI. Although pretty much it is also just steel manning fallacies of this nebulous fictitious concept. There's no way AI is going to end up making better written games. Games aren't even written that well today as far as storytelling. But there's no way with the current technology we're going to see great stories being told. Even in short stories, let alone medium length stories that video games would need, and definitely not in great long novels. Yep. And the funny thing there is Stephen King is going to be an interesting meter stick to measure things, because it's going to come down to Stephen King being an alcoholic, being high on coke, which I think he admitted to that, writing things like The Stand and Carrie, even in his inebriated state. He has written really well appreciated, really well received novels, and AI is not going to come anywhere close to that. I'm certain of it. Not anytime soon. Eventually, maybe, yes, probably not anytime in the next few decades. By the time AI is actually really good, we should have long since solved any kind of resource war style conflicts. We should be in a post-scarcity economy at that point. We should be in a post-scarcity economy even now, but we aren't. A lot of that has to do with logistics and governments and waste. Government doing wasting and corporate wastage. Let's not just blame the governments here. But back to video games. You have a blog opinion here from GameDeveloper.com that says modders are developers, it's time to pay them. The future of gaming is in the hands of in-game creators. The problem with that is that the one instance we have seen of that happening so far is Roblox paying little kids almost nothing, slave wages, to make content. And then we also have to mention Bethesda and Skyrim mods. Massive amounts of mods there that those modders deserve to be paid, but there's been no way in which we found where Bethesda can fairly charge a price for mods and then actually put the money into the hands of the modders, without Bethesda also trying to sell you horse armor and overcharge you on horse armor and then keep a significant cut from it. Like, the best way to solve this problem is definitely for modders to make their own games and not make mods, not use creation toolkits and things like that to make mods that will only work on one engine. It is better now than ever to just learn how to use Godot and make your own game from scratch, and be inspired by other games and borrow/steal ideas from other games, but make your game its own thing. Pay $100, put it on Steam Direct, and hope it sells. Of course, you should also promote your game and try and get it wishlisted and have a whole publishing campaign effort there too, not just throwing it on Steam. Yeah. The teams of mod authors in Feed the Beast, apparently they were bought out by Microsoft, were they? I'm not sure if that's what that's saying or not. I'm trying to skim this article. But you know, the Feed the Beast mods from Minecraft have their own issues in that they are attractive and well-known mods, but they also are fairly unbalanced as far as what a reasonable playthrough for Minecraft should be. Feed the Beast just always devolves in the back half of the game, with you having numbers that go up into the thousands, if not the millions, of energy or items, and it just makes the scale of the game crazy. That's why the basic Minecraft game without any mods keeps everything fairly simple. Stacks of 64 blocks, for example. And then there's a lot of automation that tends to be in Feed the Beast mods. Also, Video Games Chronicle says that the Embracer Group says Alone in the Dark reboot sold below expectations. Outcast: A New Beginning performed similarly poor. Not super surprising there. I don't think either of those games did well in the advertisement and publishing of it, promotion of it. I think Alone in the Dark itself suffers in that whatever game you make in Alone in the Dark should really just be a whole new horror first-person action game, having nothing connected to the Alone in the Dark series. Otherwise, the name is good, but it is very much a case where the name has been used out too much. There hasn't been a well-received Alone in the Dark game since the first one, and that was decades ago. 63, 66 scores on Metacritic, depending on platform. A big part of that, though, I think, is that this is a puzzle game that they really didn't promote well as a puzzle game, and they really didn't promote at all. And it's a game that they released, I would suspect, at the absolute wrong time. They should have pushed it back. Not that the game even seems like it was buggy, but they should have pushed it back to October, when people are more in the mood to play horror games and buy horror games. Releasing a horror game in like March, I think, is when it came out. But yeah, so Embracer Group doesn't seem like it knows what it's doing, really, as far as getting enough games made in the first place, or promoting the games and advertising the games. The smartphone Dragon Quest Champion game is going to end service on July 30th. There's undoubtedly, I believe, too many Dragon Quest games. It was crazy a couple of years ago when they said they had 12 Dragon Quest games in development. Dragon Quest, the main Dragon Quest game, sells like hotcakes in Japan. It's the best-selling JRPG out there. They should just focus on that, and if they're going to make 1 or 2 spin-off games, they have to be very much well thought out. But yeah, I don't think spin-off games, even from super successful games, will work. Relic has partnered with an investment firm to go indie again. Some of this news might be somewhat old. ESA, the Entertainment Software Association, has appointed Sue Madden, that's a coincidence, as the new executive director for ESA Foundation. Under Madden's leadership, the ESA Foundation will provide new grants and opportunities to future developers, as noted focus on community. A noted focus on community and diversity seems to be also there. So, this, on the face of it, could be misread. That Sue Madden, which I assume is this lady, but maybe not. This may just be a stock image. Honestly, I think this is a stock image and a poor choice for a screenshot if it is. On the face of it, it would seem like ESA has just appointed Sue Madden as their personal executive director, but the ESA Foundation, I think, is actually different from the ESA. It would be the Entertainment Software Association Foundation. You don't need both of those words unless they're separate things. So this must be a subsidiary part of the ESA. And yeah, the dreaded DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a community focus seems to be what they're focusing on. I think we'd already seen some evidence that the ESA was going down that route. It is fair to point out that the ESA is really struggling now. From the outside looking in, I think they're really struggling to find an identity, as now they are not running E3, and that was the vast amount of how they got their money, was that they would run E3 and they would charge millions of dollars for stage times and major presences at the E3 events, or if not millions, thousands for even small booths. So now the ESA has only one pipeline in which they can charge anyone for money, which is through rating games through their subsidiary, the ESRB. And I'm surprised they have not yet announced an increase in the fee to have your game rated and use the ESRB rated T for teen type labeling. I guess the ESA probably also has some kind of association dues that they charge Microsoft and Nintendo and Sony, who are all part of the ESA and really the actual corporations running the place. But without having money to keep themselves going, ESA also is running out of money to lobby the government. And yeah, I seriously doubt whoever becomes president in the next general election is going to be a young man who knows about video games and cares about video games, and I doubt any of the congressmen or representatives are going to be young people, men or women, I should have said, that know anything or care anything about video games. The TikTok ban has already been passed. I wouldn't be surprised if similar anti-video game company bans were talked about or passed in the near future. So the ESA as a lobbying group kind of needs to exist. But yeah, it definitely feels like they're trying to find their personality, trying to find where they would be relevant, trying to figure out what they're going to do. A lot of this DEI stuff is not done for any reason other to increase their share prices and make their stock prices more valuable, more attractive to investors. Although in the game industry it almost feels like they actually do care. And I don't have anything wrong with the general concepts of the DEI. It's just a matter of how they implement it, and since they so far haven't done anything, I can't really say whether I think they're implementing it well or not. ESA has been noticeably inactive for as long as I've been following them. Like, they really have not done anything at all other than fail to continue to have E3 happen. At some level, I guess the ESRB still has a very puritanical look in how games are rated, and I would argue that it is kind of crazy that you can't have any nudity at all in anything below a teen plus game, when there might be some cases where, you know, a little kid in a E for Everyone game moons somebody as like just a funny joke. That shouldn't immediately knock you up to teen plus because you want to do a mooning joke, or group bathing in a Japanese game where it is very much culturally acceptable for women or men of the same gender of many different ages to bathe in public bathhouses, and yet that still has to be censored just to get an appropriate rating in the West by the ESRB. So yeah, their censorious nature is about the only thing I've had a problem with as far as the ESA and their subsidiary, the ESRB, so far. GameDeveloper.com also has a headline here that the Hooded Horse CEO, which I've never heard of this company, says, "Forget success, judge publishers on how they respond to adversity. When I talk to developers, I tell them it's a little unfair to judge us by manor lords in the way that you're being way too favorable to us." It's an interesting thought, certainly. Now, and in fairness, I think this is, just from the headline, a very good argument to make, is that if you were shopping for a publisher and not just desperate for a publisher to pay you to make a game and taking whatever offers you can get, if you had the ability to shop around, which most game developers don't, looking at what a publishing company does when there is controversy, when there is trouble, when there's low sales, those markers, those red flags, are much more useful to know about than a publisher who is just lucked out and had nothing but success and then done right by its developers because it's had nothing but success. That whole Frogwares mess comes to mind as an example of publishers and developers running into conflict. But you could also just look at Microsoft, Xbox. Xbox effectively is one big publishing company, and the second it ran into the slightest bit of adversity in the sense that it couldn't report high enough profits to the shareholders, it laid off and shuttered a whole bunch of companies. On top of which, it failed to really manage those companies for years before to avoid just a major sell-off of those companies, or at least staggering the layoffs and sales. And while generally publishers don't acquire companies like Activision Blizzard, a publisher that's spending all of its money in one place is definitely not going to have its money for other places. for other game developers and for sequel projects. Let's see, YouTube Gaming still being fairly ridiculous in the they go, which creator's stats look like this? Now I'd say maybe it's me, but I have absolutely no idea how you would read this chart because of the colors. Like, no clue at all. Like, I have no idea what these numbers are. I have no clue what the green shades and yellow and green shades are about. As best as I would assume here is to just ignore all the colors, which are here for just matching this logo, I guess, and just assume it's 100% editing, 100% gameplay, 100% commentary, 100% knowledge, 100% consistency, and 100% entertainment. So it's just 100 all over. No telling what all these other UI elements are supposed to represent. And even if that was the case, then that doesn't make any sense. You can't give your 100% all to everything. This is 600% as far as percentages go, if you add it all together. And I generally imagine even the best content creators out there should have very little editing skill, because why would you be good at editing? And they shouldn't probably be anywhere close to 100% in gameplay, because then that would just be a pro player. So that should be like an esports player at that point, spending his time esports playing, not commentating. Now, as far as commentary, I don't think anybody's going to be at 100% anything, but I think commentary should probably be somewhere around 75% for a good content creator. Even if you were at 51%, I think you're good enough. Just as long, I mean, the vast majority of people making commentary on videos on YouTube, whether video game or otherwise, is mindless drivel down at like what would be 1%. As far as knowledge goes, you should be knowledgeable in it. So again, just 51% or higher. Again, nobody's going to be at 100%. Again, you don't want somebody straight up lying to you at a 0% knowledge because they don't know what they're talking about, or intentionally lying. And then consistency. The algorithm wants consistency like crazy, and I know the fandom wants consistency, so you need to be about 90 there. And then entertainment is just completely subjective, so theoretically, yes, you'd want to be at 100% entertainment value, but you would definitely have to balance that with commentary and gameplay. Otherwise, you are creating something that isn't so much a gaming video at that point. I think Game Grumps is kind of an example of that, where there are definitely times where the entertainment value at Game Grumps is so high that the gameplay and commentary is non-existent, and there's almost no commentary in most Game Grumps videos. But yeah, while this could have been a screenshot that would have led to a deeper conversation, like most of their tweets, it's not getting seen by much, and it's not getting commented by much. This was 4 hours ago, and the colors here just confusing. Like, honestly, I have no idea how you're supposed to read this, if the colors are supposed to mean something. If the colors are supposed to mean something, there would be a sharp vertical line instead of a slanted change in the color gamut. And then again, they're desperate for content and interaction, so they said for every 50 likes they were going to add a mob to this image, and then they put a picture here with a whole bunch of mobs, although I'm not sure if you consider all of these things mobs. For every 50 likes there are, here is the original post, and it has 1.2k hearts, which I assume is what they meant by likes on Twitter. which if you were to divide that, that should mean that there are 200 am I off here? 24. There should be 24 mobs here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Seems like they literally just made 40 mobs and made multiple versions. You can do this very easily. All you do is start with one image and then you add a mob and take a screenshot and then make that a different layer and then add another mob, take a screenshot. Actually, you don't even have to do it in layers in Photoshop. There's no reason to even do it that way. You could do it that way, but it would probably not be worth it. You could also start with this image in Photoshop and then you could have this image as the background layer and then you could erase things as this would be the top layer, and then you could just erase the top layer for each number. You could do that in Photoshop. There's kind of no real reason to do it that way though in this case. But yeah, the number of mobs there not lining up with the number of likes that they were even expecting when you run the math. So yeah, YouTube gaming on Twitter still proves to be pretty useless. I feel like I'm at this point probably ranting about them for no reason more than presenting any useful information. One thing YouTube did present as useful information is they've made a new video talking about yellow monetization and being demonetized and challenging demonetization under the slightly improved system that they've announced, which really is just going to give you timestamps and a little bit more feedback when you're demonetized. But inherently also, if you have something in your video and it gets demonetized, under this new system you cannot go into the editor and remove that content. There was a time there where you could remove content that was causing, like the minute of the content that was causing demonetization, and I think they probably are still doing that for like copyrighted music, but for other reasons it seems like they are doing a bait and switch here, and that option is going out the window. I imagine there was a lot of people that thought they could edit out a minute that was causing a video to be demonetized, and then they were removing the edit and putting the video content back in, and that probably wasn't ever going to work, but I imagine there might be a lot of people trying it anyways. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says the Fragbit CEO has stepped down after they declared their subsidiary Fall Damage bankrupt. The company is now seeking a rights issue worth $6.8 million to repay its debts. So, from what I'm getting from here, is Fragbit as a company bought Fall Damage and is now trying to sell off any IP that Fall Damage has to recoup the losses of Fall Damage being underwater and declaring bankruptcy. It's funny that they say it's a rights issue. Yeah, and this seems like this is a little inside baseball for me. I'm not sure what Fall Damage actually made, if they ever even made a game. So that also leaves us in this weird Alara Prime. Yeah, I've never even heard of a game called Alara Prime. Nintendo has announced that it's going to open an official store in San Francisco next year, which I guess makes some sense in the general idea that it is in the exact diagonal opposite direction of Manhattan, New York City, where that is the only other Nintendo store I know of in the United States. It doesn't perhaps make the most amount of sense in that you're paying for a high amount of San Francisco real estate prices, and San Francisco in general is not doing particularly great as far as feeling like a safe, ideal place you would want to vacation or shop. They have some real PR issues, to say the least, from what I've heard. Whereas it would probably make a lot more sense to have a Nintendo store in Las Vegas. Get a lot of tourist traffic there. You could have the store inside of a casino. It would be very safe and secure, and it still would be roughly in the same direction, kind of, but not really, in the middle of the United States. Now, let me throw out a theory. I won't call it a tinfoil hat theory as to why Nintendo has decided San Francisco. The Japanese, Nintendo's a Japanese company, are very, very comfortable with their high-speed rail and bullet train technology. They love it quite a bit. Recently, which is to say, over the course of the past 2 presidential terms, there has been a major push to fund high-speed rail in the United States. And one of the first high-speed rail places, not using Japanese bullet train technology to my knowledge, but still high-speed rail, one of the first ones that is getting closer to being finished is between Redmond, Washington State, or Seattle, Washington, and San Francisco, California. Nintendo of America is in Redmond, Washington, which is just a subsidiary of Seattle, effectively. It's on the way. So, it would be incredibly convenient in a Japanese company's mind if there was a bullet train to jump on at Nintendo of America's office and ride all the way down to San Francisco to meet with other people or to check on the Nintendo store. And I imagine Nintendo of Japan is thinking, well, if San Francisco has got this new high-speed rail, obviously all the Americans everywhere are going to ride it and use it, and it's going to bring a ton of foot traffic to the Nintendo store. I think they're wrong about that. I think they're misunderstanding the situation quite a bit. But that would be my theory there, is that the high-speed rail sold itself as being very attractive to the Japanese Nintendo company, and that's why they picked San Francisco. It might also have nothing to do with the rail. It might be that the Japanese just have a very different feeling and opinion on San Francisco because they may just have a different experience there, or they may be thinking of a San Francisco from 10 years in the past. It is also just a question as far as where else are they going to put it. I would say Las Vegas. You could put one in like Oklahoma City. in the middle of the United States and some of those flyover states, maybe, but there's just not a lot of foot traffic to those locations. You could put one in Orlando, Florida, certainly, but you could put one in Canada and Mexico City also. But yeah, there's only a few mega cities that would really appeal to Nintendo to put a store in it, until they're really willing to just have Nintendo stores everywhere. And I wouldn't be surprised if Walmart eventually just convinced Nintendo to have a Nintendo store section. It's believable that as Walmarts get away from physical disc sales, Blu-rays, they might just expand those sections to have more and more video game merchandise and clothing, and maybe it wouldn't be an exclusive Nintendo section, but all this Mario and Nintendo stuff could be types of things on the shelves. And yeah, there's a lot of collectible little stuffed things with Mario everywhere here. Nintendo stores would also be fairly weird in that you're going to get overcharged for accessory items, and then you're also going to be pressured into buying $60, $70 video games. Let's see. This is news reporting on opinion, which is not really news reporting, but apparently the Saber CEO Matt Karsh still thinks that the Embracer criticism is unfair. He doesn't think the Embracer criticism is fair, is what it says, but yeah. Anytime you're talking on the phrase fair or using the word fair, you've lost any good arguments that you can be making. And yeah, I think pretty much all the criticism that Embracer Group has had so far has been very fair. Like, who else are you going to blame other than Embracer themselves for what they did, for what they failed to learn from THQ in the past, for what they didn't do, which is mostly their problem. Is like, it's very easy to list what they did and point out what they did, what was wrong with what they've done so far, but there is a long list of things they didn't do also that they should have known what to do. I feel like at this point I have to just admit I was overly depressed / negative around Stellar Blade's coverage, because I've said 2 or 3 times now that this is probably the last time I'm going to see any press coverage around Stellar Blade, and Shift Up is doing a very good job of proving me wrong here. They've added a boss challenge mode and new outfits. Update 1.003, that's an odd numbering system. Also includes several bug fixes and quality of life improvements. I was watching a YouTuber talk about Stellar Blade, and apparently the artistic creator, according to this YouTuber who made the character designs for Stellar Blade, worked on the Magna Carta series before that. They also said that Stellar Blade / Project Eve was secretly in development 5 years before the announcement, the original announcement, which, if that is accurate, that would mean that Project Eve / Stellar Blade has been in development for the entire life of Project Nikkei, and probably most of the life of Destiny Child. It would mean that after the first 6 months to a year of Destiny Child coming out, it was in development, at least in its global form. Now, it wouldn't have been out the entirety of the Korean version of Destiny Child, because that was a couple of years behind the global release. So yeah, they definitely seem, if that information is true, they played the long game, which that's probably that's absolutely the way to develop any kind of game, is spend 5 years in secret and don't tell anybody you're even working on the game until you're 1 or 2 years away from it being released. They probably didn't have a publisher, that would be my guess, until the last 2 years of Stellar Blade. They probably weren't working directly with Sony at that point. That would explain quite a lot. Anyways, a new Fortnite season has added Fallout's T60 power armor and a Wastelander Magneto, which I don't know if Wastelander Magneto is supposed to be a Fallout reference or not. And I would say none of this looks like a T60 power armor to me, as far as the screenshot goes. Is this supposed to be a T60 power armor? Fallout New Vegas doesn't have a T60 power armor. It's like a T41 and a T50. Yeah. Let's jump through all this. It's a whole animated announcement. A bunch of announcements of new, more generic characters. Alright, there's a T60 power armor. Yeah, Fortnite is very much just a fairly ridiculous game. At a certain level, I guess, though, a lot of this feels more Mad Max related than even Fallout related. Yep. The Fortnite is the first game I would say that actually looks like it might become that ridiculous multiverse, metaverse, where every single avatar from every single game could possibly exist and players are just interacting with each other. But at the core of it, Fortnite still is just a bunch of people running around shooting each other. So the idea of a metaverse where you could do other things still really has not been proven. It really is just more skins. And then here, the Famitsu sales on Komatsu.com have been updated from the 13th to the 19th. And you can see Stellar Blade once again being highlighted as a screenshot, taking the PS5 version taking the #1 spot, and then Nintendo Switch taking everything to the 27th spot with Rise of Ronin, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is way down there in the 29th spot. Biomutant for the Nintendo Switch isn't new in the 19th spot, and nothing else is new. And Hardware Cells still has the Switch OLED model in #1 spot, outselling by double the PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and Series S still seem like they're doing better than ever in Japan, while the PS4 is practically selling nothing anymore. And games are starting to announce that they will not support the PS4 in one way or the other, and I think it's probably the case that most games weren't going to support the Xbox One anyways. Let's see. This is a GameDeveloper.com general synopsis. Just to remind you, Embracer cut ties with more than 4,500 employees and canceled 80 projects over the past year. So, criticism as far as what Embracer has done is somewhat valid, in my opinion. Headcount was reduced by 27%. Now, the screenshot is a little bit deceptive in that I don't think this Epic Mickey port or remaster for PC. I don't think that project has been canceled, and I'm still somewhat excited about it coming to PC, considering Epic Mickey 2 is available on PC. I'm not sure that had too much to even do with Embracer. I guess it did. But yeah. But to get back to the idea of silence and not doing the right thing, Embracer has done a really poor job of saying how they plan on steering the ship forward correctly and doing better in the future. So yes, it's easy to criticize what they've done in the past here, but it's also very valid to criticize what they plan on doing in the future. Alright, and then I think mostly the rest of these tabs are not actual news. Still doing some fairly ridiculous promotions. Here you have a Minecraft box full of a Minecraft Lego. So this is like a custom made Lego brick. So is it supposed to be like a puzzle that they have to open? Nope. They knew the YouTubers were too dumb to solve a puzzle, so instead they just had them smash it open. Then they have them build some Minecraft stuff. The Lego Minecraft sets at this point are kind of irrelevant. I don't think they really are gonna sell or make too many more of them. That crossover didn't work too well because Lego effectively is Minecraft, so why would you want to do Minecraft in Lego? Here are the suits so far that you can unlock through the launcher. It's kind of hidden in the top left of the Bedrock version. There's this little present box you have to click. So yeah, it'd probably be easiest to just come back the last day and collect them all, but you might miss them if you did that. Apparently there's Minecraft cards for the Microsoft Solitaire thing too. There is something to be said as far as a Lego fan to the idea that you might just buy a Lego set that is encased in Legos and then the rest of the pieces are inside. But Legos would fall apart certainly if you tried to ship and mail them alone, so they'd still need to be in a cardboard box, and they'd need to probably be in a second cardboard box for as much as delivery people kick around like boxes. So yeah, and it probably would take up way more space than necessary to have pieces built into a box. Yeah, would have been much more entertaining if that was some kind of puzzle where they had to open it pushing certain bricks in. And that, at least that advertisement is really just a Minecraft having YouTubers and Lego promote Minecraft. That seems much better than some of the other video commercials they've made recently, or the crossover events they've done recently. This was Gametsu talking about how announcement season is beginning, so we are on the verge here, looking at their schedule, of quite a lot of small time announcements starting in May 25th, and then Summer Game Fest is June 7th. A lot of these are not super big, announcements and secondary. I'm a little surprised Microsoft still is letting Day of the Devs go through, but the danger there is if they pulled out Double Fine from being involved, I Am 8-Bit would just still do Day of the Devs. A lot of these directs feel like they were brand new last year, so it feels kind of like the second year for some of this. June 9th with Xbox Showcase will be a big one. Whereas most of the others. June 30th, you know they won't talk about hardware, so this Nintendo Direct probably isn't that big. But yeah. June and July is when it seems like we're going to start getting announcements for games for possibly 2025. Maybe we'll get lucky and have some games actually announced and released this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if most people consider this year to be mostly a loss. A former Embracer chief operating officer says Asmodee can handle its 900 million euro debt, which is odd for a former COO to say that. There's no way to really tell, though, as far as any company handling any amount of debt, because the debt itself can very well be manipulated in so many different ways. And then I think even more gameplay footage has leaked from Deadlock, from Valve News Network in particular. Tyler McVicker, he put something new on his YouTube channel just earlier today. I haven't gotten around to look at it. The more interesting thing that caught my eye is that here's another internal shot of Valve, and they do still have decorations like this giant valve, which in fairness, you get this made once, you're not going to get rid of it. But yeah, this looks like this is a decent waiting room from the looks of it, but it's not going to really hint at much, I imagine, as far as what happens in Valve. Yeah, the rumor is that Deadlock plays a lot like Dota. We'll see how well that's received. I definitely feel like this is going to be one of those games that Valve makes for a very different type of gamer that is not going to be me, more of an esports gamer, and there will just be that audience willing to play that, and I hope it's good for Valve enough to keep them in business and make the money so they don't have to stop being private or do something desperate. But overall, there is a danger of Valve releasing a game that is just like Counter-Strike 2, that gives them a massive money pile to rest on, and then they don't do anything else innovative. That being said, while that claim and accusation could have been made in the past with the Steam Deck and even the VR Oculus experiments that they did before that, the Valve of the past 6 or 7 years has shown to be a Valve that actually is doing things and would benefit by having more money. I definitely feel like if Valve made $1 billion extra, they would spend $1 billion trying to improve the Steam Deck, buying inventory parts at a higher bulk rate, and reducing the overall price, hopefully, of the Steam Deck. If they had the money to sell a Steam Deck for $350 with an OLED screen and a decent internal storage, that would potentially be even cheaper than whatever the next Nintendo console is for what you're getting. It might be just literally cheaper. And we may still see something like that happen. The next Nintendo console might get announced, and then they might just undercut the value on the Steam Deck. They might release something that a Steam Deck Lite that is cheaper than the next Nintendo Switch. Of course, none of that has anything to do with Deadlock, unless, of course, Deadlock makes them a ton of money and helps them achieve larger goals. And at a certain point, I also think Valve and Steam should probably speed up the process in which they improve their storefront. It's not like they really have competition, though. But it would be nicer if it was a slightly better store, better at recommending games and selling games. And then this other thing is not YouTube related at all. I was looking up Linux color management to see if you could use lookup tables. Mostly their color management in Linux is using ICCs, color profiles for specific monitors, and so you can seemingly load monitor profiles for your specific calibrated professional level monitors in Linux, at least some Linux. But to apply a lookup table universally to Linux desktops like KDE Plasma, that doesn't seem like that's quite doable. Instead, what you're doing is you're telling specific applications that can work with calibrated monitors to use those profiles, and they have a list of, you're basically just installing this file and then a list of a few applications that you would use, which is, this is the Photoshop equivalent. This is a raw photo developer editor. Opera as a web browser handles it, and Firefox does, but noticeably Chromium does not. But yeah, most of this is all for photo editing. None of this would help in my thought of applying a lookup table for colorblind people that would apply to all of the visual rendering. So yeah, I still have some research I'd have to do if I was going to make that project. Although why start another project when I have now a fairly long list of failed projects that I haven't really made any progress on or finished in any way. Alright, well, this is a good time, and I think I'm just going to always take a break in between the main news and then looking at all the games on Steam. So this is a good time to take a break. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So let's go through all the games on Steam now, all the new games on Steam. Well, we can say no to this one. And speaking, I talked about, I have no idea what this is, so I have to give it a chance. Pointless projects that I would probably not finish. There's a lot I've done to modify the way things look, particularly on my news sources that we'll get to on the headlines, using uBlock Origin and using another plugin called Advanced Profanity Filter. It probably wouldn't be a terrible idea for me to make a how-to video to show other people how to do it. Would that be video game related? No. Would it possibly be the second, if not the most looked at video on my channel? Yes. Would it get me views? Potentially, almost certainly. Would it be the kind of views I would want that would lead to a fandom and an audience that would come back and watch my other videos? No. And see, inherently that is the problem, and it's a problem I've had before, in that my best video, most successful video I've ever made was how to install Hearthstone Deck Tracker. and that led me to a lot of views on that one video and nothing else, and then years of regret for having success in a field that you don't actually care about, and a field that you can't consistently duplicate. The only way you can really do a how-to channel and hit a point of monetization is if you are straight up stealing other people's how-to videos. It's like when you search in Google how to fix a certain error, like you're getting a Windows update error or something, you type in that error code, you get a website that tells you very generic things sometimes that will say like clear your cookies, restart your computer, install Windows updates, even if it is a Windows update. This is a different kind of looking hidden object game from the looks of it. So I'm going to give that a chance. Then we have some flooding Steam with too many. So I am going to undo the chance. This developer top-down games, probably asset flipping things from a marketplace to turn into a hidden object game. Sushi racing is silly, so I'll give it a chance. Cards Misty Battlefield, mostly negative. I guess it doesn't deserve another YouTube short in that case. These are the spin-off games, aren't these? They're in English. There's 4 games from 4 characters spin-off of something. I'm not sure what it was. Gunya Monster. Yeah. I have no idea what Gunya Monster is. But 4 spin-off games. There's definitely a lot of how-to videos I can make. At a certain level, I probably need to script them, though, if I was going to do that and do an experiment on making a video with scripting. Here we have the quintessential quintuplets, 2 games, which in fairness, I could also have said, well, you're flooding the Steam marketplace by releasing 2 of those games at the same time, but I do feel like it's a slightly different situation there. And so in the case that it really is only just 2 games, and it's not low effort asset flips, it's fairly high effort anime visual novels. This horror game looks nicely polished, and it does have one of the elements that I always want to see, which is humans and monsters. This looks weird. It's probably a troll joke game, but I'm not certain, so I'll give it a chance. Tennis Manager. Well, it's definitely not a game for me, but I'll try. I guess I do need to decide whether I think management games deserve YouTube shorts or not. I don't really want to curate too much. Just get rid of the absolute garbage and you will eliminate 95% of all the games that come out on Steam. You don't have to be too picky, particularly since YouTube shorts are nothing more than automated ways of promoting information, advertising games. Not particularly trying to even advertise it, just trying to expand awareness, which many people would argue is an advertisement. But yeah, I am getting still a lot of people that are super happy, or at least willing to say thank you when I make a YouTube short around a game. I have so far doing this had nobody upset about it. other than, I'm sure, people who hate YouTube Shorts or people who are looking at the videos. Well, that's not fair. There was one person that hated my YouTube Short and was very vocal about it, but that's an easy voice to ignore when it's one out of a lot of other people who have given likes and retweets and things like that. So, massive success in making content that has none of my own creative input on it, which is perhaps the highlight that my skill set is best utilized as a behind-the-scenes macro programmer maker and not as a video game content creator who is on the microphone. But that is not what I would want to do, and it really wouldn't work to just do that. Again, we're seeing a lot of games that are already on the fall list, which tells me they're probably doing a very good job of catching games before they're being announced. And games are doing a very good job of promoting themselves and advertising themselves than what they once were doing. Also makes me suspect that there is a spring sale / summer sale happening that these game developers are trying to avoid. There is a question certainly to be asked about the fact that publisher sales now seem almost every week. Seems like they were approaching about 50 publisher sales or some kind of sale on Steam. It is very much getting down to feel like something like Amazon.com sales, in that everything is marked up just so it can be on sale. And technically that's illegal, that you can't have things always marked up and then say it's on sale, but you can have objects in a shop that are 50% off on, say, Tuesdays and Thursdays and Fridays and Sundays, and then you can have things that were half off on all the other days, and so you can have half your inventory half off half the time, and that would be acceptable, or somewhere around acceptable. And with websites like Amazon.com, you could certainly do that non-stop. Steam hasn't been so much like that. Sales have actually mattered more. This may be the game I've been looking for a long time, in that this is a gambling game that seems to have no microtransactions and no ads in it. That being said, as I scroll down here, it seems like it's actually a casino decoration development game, casino simulator, more than it is a game where you can actually play the casino games. So it's an interesting thought. It's not particularly great quality though. So can you actually play the games? Or can you only play this one game? I bet you can only play this one game, this slot machine game right now. And I bet you can't play any of the other things. So, you know, I'll be generous and I'll put this on follow, but I'm not going to make a YouTube short at the moment. If it comes out of early access, if it's a lot more polished, then that would be the casino game that I would want to find. Casino game simulator. Still having this guy asset flip his same visual aesthetic on terrible games over and over again. I definitely feel like there's deaf-blind sensory deprivation experience in that there's nothing here. No screenshots. This does point out that if you're going to make a game like this, you need to put a video in here that would have audio playing back. Otherwise, my assumption here is that this is just a black screen. Yeah. Let's see. I guess if I was going to waste my time making a how-to video that then would potentially become way more successful than I'd like it to be, I should just look up other how-to videos and see if they already exist. That's always the right move in any kind of thought, is investigate what has already been done and not try and do something from a starting point of complete ignorance. Yeah. That would be my suggestion to myself. Do some research. Do the research. I suppose inherently it's worth pointing out that when I was in school, I didn't do any of those projects that were assigned. As far as doing research, reading books. And by all rights, I should have been kicked out of school and failed miserably if they actually held students to a higher standard. But yeah, I just got away with doing absolutely the bare minimum. So I definitely didn't develop any of those skills as far as doing research that they wanted me to develop. In fairness to my lazy previous version of myself, I didn't actually care about getting grades or even passing classes, and the type of research that was available to you when I was in school was going to a library and using library books as an established form of truth that had been verified by the librarian, by the government of a sense. And that's just not an effective, efficient way to research things, and it's not how you do things today. Of course, the way you do things today would be to Google it and go on the internet and just hope you can find the truth on the internet without being lied to, which increasingly that is questionable. But yeah, the efficiency versus the accuracy is still so much higher on the internet than it would be anywhere else. Here's another one of these games that should be in the adult section from the looks of it. We're entering a new era where Google itself is trying to push people to AI generated responses when you search things, which I'm sure that's accuracy. This is a tower defense game that's very positive. I'm gonna give it a chance just because of this kind of unique robot thumbnail. We're still seeing a lot of Survivors clone type games, and it's been a while since we've seen one of these Chinese fake porn games. An idle fishing game is an interesting thought, but visually it doesn't look interesting enough. Turns out there is fishing in Stellar Blade. Here we have a Korean visual novel, Korean language only. But yeah, I guess there isn't much more to that story though. I don't know if kids even are really required to do those kinds of projects where you research a topic in books and report on it. It's not likely to be something that you actually would do very often in the real world. Most jobs are not creative enough that you would do research that way, and if your job is creative enough that you'd be doing some kind of project that requires research, it would be so highly specialized to your specific job, your specific field, how things are specifically done in your specific office, that I'm not sure you're even getting a similar enough base skills from those kinds of projects. If the point of schools is to have an educated group of kids, I'm not sure that that's the kind of project that actually leads to kids being better educated. It really only leads kids to doing more pointless busy work in college. If the point of schools, which it traditionally has been in the past, is to have your populace taught to obey rules and be prepared to work in jobs, then research projects really don't lead to the kind of jobs that the kids are likely to have. Research projects aren't what I would consider very creative endeavors. Yeah, I definitely would say that those are the kinds of assignments that need to be rethought. And certainly when I was a kid, you couldn't ever research or talk about anything you had any expertise in before or any enthusiasm with it. If I was allowed to just like talk about a video game that I already knew about it, I could have written pages and pages on that subject. But yeah. I guess a lot of those research projects were probably also history-based projects, and researching history, I never think history is as important as it should be because of the inevitable, inheritable inaccuracy of histories and the irrelevance of most histories. You should know the basic things, yes, like who won the Civil War and when the United States was established if you're a United States citizen, but like getting into specific details about, say, the Battle of Waterloo, not really relevant information, not really that necessary as far as information goes. History fails to really discuss politics of any kind, and as such, you're missing the vast majority of why and how decisions are being made. And maybe you get into some politics discussions in college level classes, but yeah, high school, middle school history is pretty useless. Google Maps makes almost all geography useless these days too. And calculators in your pocket in the form of cell phones makes math mostly useless. So yeah, if I was going to remake the school system, I'd probably heavily focus on the artistic ventures, things that computers aren't going to be able to recreate. Just a lot of painting, photography, sculpture, creative writing, music, interpretive dance, even maybe even a little bit of sports and physicality there as a form of creative output. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling here. Let's continue so we don't go too long. So the 24-hour peak is still extremely high for Counter-Strike 2. Yeah, I don't imagine that Deadlock is secretly reporting itself as Counter-Strike 2. I imagine what the thing here is that there's roughly 500,000 to 700,000 bots playing Counter-Strike 2, and that Valve just doesn't bother to ban the bots that much. Fallout 4 is in the watching space. I definitely feel like I made a mistake not playing Fallout 4, and as much as I may not like the base building mechanics in Fallout 4, it's at least something you can do where for a house equivalent compared to New Vegas, which only has one presidential suite as your house. And the base building concept in Fallout 4 does let you do something if you have extra caps, I suspect. So that there definitely was a point in Fallout New Vegas where I had like 70,000 caps and really nothing to do with them. Either waste it buying mods and items for guns or bullets, or just sit on it. Fallout 76 is down here. Terraria is in the 49th spot, so I'd assume Minecraft would probably be somewhere between here and here if it was on Steam. Hades 2 Early Access is below Terraria. And then my chart has some dots, but because of bad information the previous day, and I think that probably confirms that the macro grabbed the bottom 100 games instead of the top 100 games. So that's probably every time there's a disconnect here is what happened. So I would just have to assume the trend here is that things are falling downward. It is kind of surprising we don't see just on a weekly basis the numbers going up a lot on Fridays and the weekends. But I guess that's probably to mostly say once it's averaged out, gamers are just playing games every day of the week. And then apparently Warhammer Skulls Festival of Video Games is happening. So we'll open that and see what that is. Yeah. An Annapurna publisher sale. Let's look at what that is. Need to actually talk here and not just go quiet. I have been looking at the sales front page of Steam more consistently in the past couple of months, and it hasn't actually led me to buying even a single game, but perhaps it has pushed me to think a little bit more about buying games when there is a sale. But yeah. At the moment, seems like nothing really is big here. The final shape for Destiny 2 I think is out now, so that is bumped up quite a bit. I don't know if you can play the final shape as a free-to-play player though. It might be an interesting thought to think, with the end of Destiny 2 approaching, will that be the end of looter shooters being super successful? Yeah, and even that phrase probably should disappear. Yeah. On the other hand, I kind of think Fallout games should be looter shooters. And I definitely have been making a lot of comparisons to Borderlands 1. And I do think just running and gunning in the Fallout universe appeals more to me than the Bethesda role-playing mechanics that have existed in the past. It's time to just make a new engine, make a whole new game. Make it a spin-off game if you want to. Fallout 76 is not too far from what I'm suggesting. I just wouldn't have it be so light on content and so microtransaction heavy. For Annapurna Interactive, we have these games being highlighted. Blade Runner 2033 Labyrinth, I guess. Would have kind of thought that either had already come out or wasn't going to come out. Are we potentially going to have a third Blade Runner movie? If we do, it's not going to have, what's his name in it, Harrison Ford. I doubt Harrison Ford would be anything. $5 for Telling Lies is about the maximum you should play with it. This Unfinished Swan for $5 is probably a good one. Play. These are different kinds of games, certainly. More artsy games. And so I wouldn't be surprised if these kinds of games get overlooked and forgotten during a Steam sale. But they are also, because they're artsy, perhaps a little bit overpriced for their nicheness. $20 for Thirsty Suitors. Probably a little too high. $20 for Stray is probably a little too high, even though a lot of people bought them. Bought that at the full price. And then the Warhammer Skulls Festival video games would have to either be just a bunch of old Warhammer games that maybe are reviewed well, or published by a company called Skulls. It's always been my impression that the Warhammer game series has really struggled to have great games. This one I already own. Yep. But the ones that are being promoted here, for the most part, are being reviewed well, except for Total War Warhammer 3. Seems like some of these might just be DLC. Yeah, it definitely has been my thought that a lot of these Warhammer 40k or Warhammer games in general, not set in the 40k future time, have kind of struggled. And I definitely would be the outsider coming in trying to cover the Warhammer games. That's why I've mostly chosen not to bother to try to get any of them or cover any of them, is that you are just going to have to commit yourself quite a bit to learning Warhammer lore. So I imagine, I don't know what the best video game would be to enter in the Warhammer series and understand it, because I really don't understand the Warhammer series at all, other than I know it's a tabletop game, and then there's Warhammer, which feels a lot like it is just Warcraft, in that it is humans fighting orcs or goblins or gnomes or something. And then there's Horus, I guess, the Emperor, that becomes this like god emperor that lives forever, and then that leads into the 40k universe, where it is a lot of fantastical fantasy type wrappings on sci-fi futuristic type environments and weapons. but that's about all I know. And in fairness, if I was to describe what I know about Warcraft, that'd be about the same. There's humans and orcs fighting in Warcraft. And it may just be that simple, and that there isn't any deeper lore that you really need to know. Alright, let's go through the headlines then from Video Games Chronicle first. A new Astrobot game will be revealed in weeks, it's being claimed. Nintendo is opening an official store in San Francisco next year. 12 games are leaving PlayStation Plus in June, including Grand Theft Auto 5. See, I don't get the feeling that Xbox Game Pass loses that many games. Here's a whole list of them. It probably does, but maybe they're just better about hiding that information. Neither one of these systems, though, feel appropriate in the fact that they are losing access to games, because that's just not really the experience people want. Nobody wants that in TV streaming services either, where you're losing video streaming rights on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu or whatever. X-Defiant's first patch reintroduces the practice zone. Stellar Blade has added a boss challenge mode and new outfits. One of the things that the YouTuber that was talking about Stellar Blade also mentioned is that Eve here as a character is actually fairly serious, or always serious as a character, and there's really never a point in the game where even other characters or the camera is overly focusing on her body. So the costumes actually feel a little bit out of place, according to this YouTuber, in that you have a serious story going on with serious characters in the story, in the conversation, and then Eve is just wearing kind of a goofy, lewd outfit that's not getting mentioned at all. In the same way that if you could make a custom character in a video game that's serious, a lot of times those custom characters look goofy and silly. New Fortnite season adds Fallout T-60 power armor and a Wastelander Magneto character. The next free Epic Games Store title is leaked. Chivalry 2 will replace Farming Simulator 22. Neil Druckmann says AI will push the boundaries of storytelling. Devolver Digital confirms its next showcase will be in early June. UK has passed a bill which could force Apple to allow Fortnite in an Epic Games Store app on iOS. This is similar to the European Union's Digital Markets Act, which is already in effect. Yeah. And I imagine you will see similar laws passed in many countries, maybe not the United States, and maybe not some smaller countries like Singapore or Taiwan. They may go in different directions. May just ban the App Store and Apple altogether. Yep. Inherently, there is a danger here. It hasn't happened yet, where the EU makes their own app store full of censorship, or the UK makes their own app store full of censorship, or more realistically, China makes their own app store full of censorship, and then they force Apple to allow the Chinese app store onto Apple iPhones, and then they force their citizens to use the Chinese app store more than the Apple App Store. Like that could be the next steps, certainly. Of course, that is a slippery slope argument that we'd have to actually see some evidence of it actually slipping first before I'd really believe that. At the moment, they seem to just be trying to promote more open markets and more fairness and more consumer choice, which are usually not bad things. Alone in the Dark sold below expectations, according to the Embracer Group. This week's free Epic Games Store title has been confirmed. Farming Simulator 22 is free until May 30th, when it will be reportedly replaced by Chivalry 2. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 Direct Showcase has been confirmed for June 9th. Multiversus director says that data mines are doing a disservice to the players. They don't get the grand reveal that we have planned. I kind of almost agree with the director in this case. It's like, what really is the point of spoiling yourself on reveals? Now, obviously, the Multiversus director wants the grand reveal to get people hyped to get people to buy the game when they may have not actually bought the game otherwise. But as an actual gamer, having information ahead of time in this case doesn't, I think, really help you any. Yeah, because you're basing your decisions on data mines, rumors, and speculation, basically. Things that might change. And you having that extra information maybe gives you more time to decide whether you would want to buy, in this case, Multiversus at all. But for most people, if you're looking for data mines, you probably already have bought Multiversus or have decided you're going to buy Multiversus. So yeah, I definitely think gamers should spend their time playing games more than trying to look for data mines or data mining themselves. Like, yeah, I don't think it's that helpful. It's not really to a level of investigative journalism where information that's getting out needs to be released or has any value to society by being released early. Atari has acquired the Intellivision brand, ending the first ever console war. Well, is that how console wars end? Is that Atari, a company, goes bankrupt several times over, and some holding company buys the name of Atari to buy Intellivision, which I think also has gone bankrupt several times over, so their name can be bought out? Is that literally all the console war is just who owns the rights to a logo, a name, or who owns the intellectual property of rights to games that are incredibly old? And see, on one hand, I can almost say maybe consolidation of old game companies makes some sense for historical archival purpose, but that only makes sense if it was something like archive.com or archive.org or the Library of Congress that was consolidating and owning all these old game companies and the IP for all these old games. And that's not what's happening here. If anything, it would probably be better if both Atari and Intellivision were just all in the public domain. Every single game they've ever made should be in the public domain as abandonware, I think, by most people's definition. Yeah, I will throw out my personal desire, which is once a company goes bankrupt, its creative intellectual property should be public domain. And bankruptcy should really only cover physical things like computers, hard drives, maybe the hard drive with the backup of code, but the code itself, the data, the creative work, should just be public domain, even if it's not going to be ever uploaded to the internet because somebody owns the physical hard drive that code is on it. But yeah, the idea that Atari can go bankrupt and a holding company can buy their name is kind of ridiculous. Ignoring that, Atari buying Intellivision kind of makes some sense, but we still haven't really seen this new Atari do anything great with anything. And apparently Atari has bought Intellivision brand, but a rebranded Intellivision LLC still exists, working with the Amico console. Yep. And this definitely feels like this is barely news. So let's move on. PlayStation execs predicts focus will shift from graphics to immersive narratives. Technological advancements will enhance emotional depth in games over the next decade. This is probably hinting at that PlayStation knows that they can't just keep pushing graphics to be better and better. Although you could have made the same claim 10 years ago and it would have felt just as valid. I think there probably is still a lot of ways in which graphics could be pushed to be better in small ways. I wish that it is a shift to immersive narratives. I also kind of wish there would be some shift to better gameplay and just better overall experiences. But yeah, it definitely is in line when you look at Last of Us as a type of game that Sony has focused more and more on very light gameplay experiences in linear storytelling. And that certainly does appeal to a lot of audiences. But in my experience with Fallout New Vegas, I want the exact opposite. I want deep immersive narratives and gameplay and graphics. I want everything because that game is so old. But if I was going to trade anything, it would be away from graphics. I can definitely see a case where you could make a Fallout spin-off game that looked much more like Fallout Shelter and was just bright and colorful and silly. Neil Druckmann says Naughty Dog title could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. This definitely is a case of Neil Druckmann promising way too much. And pretty much anytime you have somebody who is known by their name alone, instead of getting a headline where it says Naughty Dog CEO says that the next title could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming, that tells you that this is a person who has sold himself a little bit more on his own name and his own personality and his own grand prediction than being more of a team player and promoting the actual games themselves. And you get the Todd Howard effect there a lot of times, where there's a lot of promises that often get under-delivered, or a lot of ideas that get implemented that wouldn't be implemented if a group of game developers were deciding what gamers actually wanted instead of Neil Druckmann deciding what the next video game is going to be. Or at least it feels that way. But yeah, a lot of promises. Meanwhile, I don't suspect that Naughty Dog is going to announce any game this year, and I doubt they're going to release any new game for the next 2 years. So this may very well also not be relevant news. Activision has officially confirmed Black Ops 6 is this year's Call of Duty game. And so here we have some logos. I might at some point want to research whether Call of Duty has any more affiliation with the US military, because it definitely feels like the Call of Duty series is increasingly going into an anti-military, anti-US government storytelling experience, showing dark stories that may be based on reality or may just be totally made up. Whereas usually if there is a US military affiliation, then there is a question as far as usually when there's a US military affiliation, it's usually highly patriotic, although those games tend not to sell too well. A futuristic PlayStation controller has been shown as Sony presents its creative entertainment vision. This is obviously a computer-generated mock-up. So the question here probably watched the whole video. Let's look at the screenshot. Is how much of this technology would be doable in what we're seeing? Well, for the most part, this is just a PlayStation controller with two what look like touchpads instead of button layouts into analog sticks. And what looks to me like maybe one trigger here, maybe a trigger here, and then doesn't seem like there's any more triggers here. And this is probably a real prop held by somebody. But even in that, you can see this is not really long enough to get a good grip on this. And maybe that's where this ring comes into play, is that you need one hand to stabilize holding it if you move the other hand. But yeah, this is a really small looking device for really no reason. If you could take the ring apart or even maybe rotate the ring, this controller might be smaller, but it's still not going to be small enough that you just carry it in your pocket every day. Then you get into the big thing on a curved screen floating in air, and that is just not likely going to happen unless you're implying somebody has some glasses, some augmented reality glasses, which would be one way to go to the future. But as far as looking at the actual controller there, that doesn't feel to me like they're even proposing that they'd make significant changes to the controller. Yeah, I don't think this would be the first time Sony has made some kind of augmented reality glasses, or at least made a push into augmented reality VR type glasses. If they were that small, if they were that lightweight, that would be interesting, and Sony should try and compete there. But the vast majority of what this video is showing here is just CGI nonsense. The implication here is that the augmented reality glasses are using some kind of technology that they're not showing to see their hand gestures and movements. We probably aren't too far off from a $500 camera-like device that could just watch your hand movements and focus heavily on that. But $500 might be way too cheap too. Interpreting hand motions and correctly interpreting hand motions would be the hard problem here. And they're promoting Horizon and Ghostbusters, and I would assume this is either TV or a singing game. It definitely feels like the move here is this really is Sony promoting Sony and creating concepts for phones and things that are nowhere close to actually being made. So was it really worth even watching that video? Becomes the question. Where it wants to be in 10 years. 10 years is actually a long time for what they're promoting here. Like, I definitely don't want to see a PlayStation controller that is so similar to a PlayStation controller now in 10 years. I'd want to see major improvements around that idea. It half feels like these might be discs that spin. Honestly, in 10 years, we may, if we get really lucky, we may have technology where you could just hold a controller in your hand and then think about making movements in your hand, and it would just read the nerve signals through your hand and react accordingly. because that's where we're getting to with amputees, is just either subdermal implants, which gamers would never do, or dermal sensors at just a very high rate of sensor and a higher level of accuracy. So we could get to a point where you just put the controllers into your hands, you strap them onto your hands maybe, and that's it. It might just be a glove, really. You may just be able to freely move your hands and not have to move at all. You may just think about doing things and then it would work, as far as controllers. And then as far as screens go, yeah, I want augmented reality glasses cheaper. That's all they need to do now. So in 10 years, it definitely makes sense you could have augmented reality glasses if you can just get them down to be $150 or so. Something that's realistic if you're going to have 2 or 3 people in the same room possibly seeing the same thing. Now on that level, somebody like Bluetooth, and it very well might be Bluetooth, needs to put out a new standard to wirelessly transmit video, and there still is likely going to be a substation somewhere. It's probably going to be a cell phone or something that looks like a cell phone that would transmit the video and be the middleman between the controller and the video. I think there is already an 802.11, maybe it's AX Wi-Fi standard specifically designed for streaming video wirelessly at what could be a 6, maybe even a 7 gigahertz bandwidth in 10 years. And that would likely be the better standard to use instead of Bluetooth making a new standard. But yeah, it's really not predicting much of anything new at all. Yeah. And yeah, I'm not sure that's really news as much as that's just a commercial. Gameplay's footage of Valve's next major title is seemingly leaked. We already talked about this. Deadlock is said to be in closed alpha testing. Rise of Ronin is adding new missions and features. Netflix offers the first look at Liam Hemsworth's Geralt the Witcher in The Witcher Season 4. So this is a trailer not worth watching. The actor who played Geralt in the first 3 seasons apparently was not liked by anybody else in the Witcher production, and the argument has been made that he was not liked because he was trying very hard to make Geralt seem true to the video games. I think even more than the books, even though the Netflix series is more based on the books, and I think the Netflix series itself is really just trying to do its own thing. So maybe just a little too rigidness. As an actor, you really can't be that rigid. If you want to be rigid, you have to be the director or the writer or the producer. But yeah, the best thing I think Amazon Prime could do at this point would be to hire the Geralt of season 1 through 3 and do their own Witcher series based on the video games, which they could probably pull that off due to the weird licensing elements here. Or, you know, even wiser, hire that actor, do something that is very much like Geralt of Rivia, but don't call him Geralt and don't have it in the Witcher universe, just have it in a fantasy universe that's somewhat close. A Call of Duty Black Ops 6 teaser website has seemingly been uncovered. So apparently this was supposed to be viral marketing, but it seems like it all happened fairly quickly as far as the reveals go. I suppose it's worth pointing out they didn't actually deface Mount Rushmore, no more than the fact that the mountain was carved and defaced originally to be made into Mount Rushmore. PlayStation's annual Days of Play sale reportedly returns this month. Arrowhead wants to remain independent and achieve From Software or Blizzard status. There's nothing in the plans where we want to be acquired. Okay. It's good to say that, I guess, out loud, but it's also perhaps better to not say that out loud, because that's going to bite you in the butt. If you do get an offer, you can't refuse and become acquired. And I guess there's nothing else really to say other than that. Arrowhead's CEO also stepped down to focus on the role as Chief Creative Officer. I hope that works out well for him, but it's highly unlikely to. And then Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's latest update adds new enemies. And then that'll bring us to the Gamatsu headlines. A barista simulation game, Tokyo Coffee, grinding in the pandemic for PC, launches in July. Let's see if we put that on the follow list. The screenshots are a little rough because you're looking downward, and it definitely seems like you're focusing heavily on single pour custom coffee blends, which may be a little too inside baseball as far as making custom coffee. A roguelike horror action game called Shi no Me Abyss, The Maiden Exorcist, has been announced for PC. You can see this is a demon lady with several different eyes. From the thumbnail, I would have thought it would have been just a visual novel or something. In a funny way, this almost feels like it's slightly inspired by, like, Binding of Isaac, which there have been a couple of games that have been somewhat inspired by Binding of Isaac, but not a lot. But yeah, you've got the whole layout of a map here. You've got multiple weapons, power-ups. Yeah, that is intriguing. They're comparing it to Downwell. Maybe that's right, maybe it isn't. Genshin Impact version 4.7 update, An Everlasting Dream Intertwined launches June 5th. Totally misread that. Magical Drop 6 is coming to the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox One and Series on June 14th. The Magical Drop series, I believe, is a gym matching game. It's already on Steam. It's rated very positively. I feel like this is also a fairly long-running series that it's probably not had a new game in a while before Magical Drop 6. Go ahead and put it on the wish list since it is rated very positively. It's out of early access. Kind of a high price, even its lowest price of $20 feels like a high price to play this kind of game though. These are the kind of games I would expect to see on like bar arcade machines many decades ago, not sold as individual software per se, or at least not sold at even a high premium of $30. It is something that you definitely would think would make more sense as a mobile game on a cell phone these days. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink version 1.3.0 update launches May 31st. This brings about an interesting question as far as if there is an update that happens to a game that's getting kind of consistent updates, should I make a new YouTube short on it? At a certain level, I guess I have to celebrate their efforts and say yes to that. It's a new playable character, new features including a photo mode and map overlay. So yeah, I would say significant number updates, yes, get new YouTube shorts. So in 1.2 would have gotten a YouTube short, a 1.3, a 1.4, a 1.31 no, a 1.39 no, 1.35 no. I think that is the way to go with games that are going to be kind of games with services. Also, I should probably just double check to see what is being added, to see if it sounds like it's enough to justify mentioning a game or making a new YouTube short. The city building and trading simulation game Rydo's Nautical Chronicles of Trade has been announced for PC. This almost feels like this is a spin-off of the Atelier series, but nope, it is just kind of a simulation game with an interesting thumbnail, but otherwise I would say this looks fairly boring as a game, but it's probably just not my type of game. Warhammer 40k Mechanicus 2 has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. So there is a new Warhammer game. But then I guess at a certain point there always is a new Warhammer game. They over-license it way too much. Warhammer 40k Boltgun DLC Forges of Corruption has also been announced. I suspect this means that there is some kind of Warhammer 40k Warhammer event that occurs, and that's where all this announcement is coming from. Boltgun here is rated very positively, so it deserves to be in the wish list. Stellar Blade Boss Challenge Mode update launches May 24th. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 multiplayer mode reveal trailer and screenshots are available on Gamatsu. Devolver Direct 2024 is set for June 7th. And I guess they are still doing this gimmick. Usually the gimmicks don't last past 1 year. And we'll see how that goes. Volvy's 15th birthday party. PixMix or PuzMix is coming to the Xbox One and Series on May 24th. Let's see. I guess this game is popular enough to make it to the follow list, the wish list, but not really sure this is that much of a game. But we saw a brief moment when we saw a lot of games like this where objects of the same size had to come together to become objects of bigger size, effectively adding physics to 2048. Maybe this was one of the original games in that genre. Grapple Dogs Cosmic Canines launches August 15th for the Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. Yeah, obviously I still haven't worked on making sure that these Steam links are opened before I start streaming. Sushi Bin for PSVR 2 launches May 28th. This is a large variety of shapes here. You have a big strong lady, you have a tiny scrawny boy, and then you have a big strong guy. It's an odd combination of characters. I wish there was some screenshots here, but honestly since it's a VR2 game, I kind of just don't care. Well, we could click this and see if we can see the screenshots here. Yes, it does seem very silly. And I was making YouTube shorts around VR games anyways. Yeah, I did get one comment on a VR game saying this is the reason, this is the millionth reason or something that I want a VR headset. So there are still people out there that are enthusiastic about VR, and obviously there are game developers still enthusiastic about VR. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 has been announced. Cooking and management game Magical Bakery has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. This is fairly polished in the visuals from the looks of the screenshots. Famitsu sales from 513 to 519 have been updated. We already looked at these numbers, so there's no reason to cover it again. Multiversus Jason Voorhees gameplay trailer is available on Gamatsu. Atari has acquired the Intellivision brand, and Intellivision Entertainment is going to instead rebrand to Intellivision LLC. I think is how that's going to go. Totally Spies Cyber Mission launches October 31st for all consoles and PC. This feels like this has got to be a re-release of an old game, though, because I can't imagine that Totally Spies is still popular or still airing in cartoon form. It might very well be on some kind of streaming service, but yeah, I just don't really believe that that brand would survive to a second generation. Yeah. There was so little push, and even now there's so little push around what seems like female-centric entertainment that there really aren't that many cartoons that were for girls in the first place, and it definitely doesn't feel like there's just that same male energy of obsession where kids who were little boys watching Ghostbusters cartoons would grow up to be adults who are watching Ghostbusters movies and then bringing their children into watching the old Ghostbusters cartoons. Yeah, I just don't think there's that much of that level of obsession or brand loyalty, if you want to call it that, amongst the female fandom. Anyways, I guess I'll leave it at that. DNF Duel DLC character Nin Master launches June 13th. This is a very sharp angle here on the visuals. You don't see that much in games where the hand is just right up on the screen and then you have a really deep depth of field. That's a more of a level of artistic effort there. Though in fairness, I wouldn't be surprised if DNF Duel is still just your standard single layer of depth of field fighting game. 3D fighting games in general, which I don't believe DNF Duel is a 3D fighting game, always confused me visually. I just never really could figure that it was adding much to a fighting game concept. It makes sense if you were in like VR to be in a 3D fighting arena, but since the screen on the TV is always going to flatten things to 2D, then the game might as well just be 2D to begin with. or 2.5D, 3D, 2.5D. Dragon Quest Kishi Kishi is going to end service on July 31st. This is a puzzle game that ran for just over 2.5 years, which highlights how even if you have a great license like Dragon Quest, most mobile games do fail in the first 3 years or so. And this is the second Dragon Quest mobile game we've heard being announced, or we've heard the cancellation of being announced. Dragon Quest Champions, being the other game, is going to end service on July 30th. So 2 Dragon Quest mobile games. This was a melee combat battle RPG, and it ran for just over a year. The Legend of Heroes Kai no Kisekai Farewell O Zamora web commercial and more characters and locations have been detailed. All that information on Gematsu.com. A lot of screenshots, a lot of characters being promoted. This is a series that is definitely going to take a lot of work if I ever try to get into it. A lot of variety in the characters and the type of weapons and attacks. Arc of Sharon launches in early access on July 9th. So, I guess we have a date now. So, maybe I should make another YouTube short on that. Guess maybe that would make some sense. Samurai Showdown rollback netcode update is now available. Is Samurai Showdown a fighting game? It would have to be to have rollback netcode, I guess. Yep. I guess what they're doing here is they're having a deeper depth of field for this fighting game in the attack animations. Which I guess that kind of works. Whereas this is really what it's going to look like when you're actually not doing a unblockable attack animation. I assume you would only show an attack animation if it was unblockable, or maybe a finisher move if it's unblockable. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 DLC character Future Saga Chapter 1 launches May 24th. Helldivers 2 developer Arrowhead Game Studios has appointed a new CEO in Shams Yoryani. Is how I'm gonna Yoryani. That's how I'm gonna pronounce his name. This, of course, was after the other CEO stepped down to be the chief creative officer and chairman. Right, and then that's going to bring us to the GameDeveloper.com articles. Let's see how that goes. Fragbit CEO steps down after the company declares fall damage bankrupt. Machine learning was used to sync subtitles in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. How much machine learning do you really need, though, to sync subtitles? Like, how much of that is really machine learning? Why can you not just have subtitles automatically play when they hear audio go over a certain loudness in the dialogue? Now, I'd assume this was done because there was multiple languages in Spider-Man 2, so it would be like when the when the Spanish Spider-Man starts talking, the Spanish subtitles should play at that same time and at that same pace. There's inherently some fairly rigid rules that you need to follow for subtitles to make them actually readable. So subtitles actually shouldn't be in sync as much as you think. They should be on the screen a little bit longer if somebody's talking fast, and if somebody is talking slow, leave him on the screen for as long as he's talking. You are never to really focus on getting the subtitles off the screen so it visually looks better. So yeah, you also don't want subtitles to go so fast though that they are there before the person is actually speaking, but they can be fairly fast. Like the entire sentence of what somebody is about to say can pop up as somebody starts saying that sentence. And if somebody's a fast reader, well, they'll be one sentence ahead. So I heavily question whether this isn't AI machine learning nonsense hype, when they probably used a fairly established method and software that really isn't AI or machine learning in the first place, or they did use some fancy AI machine learning technology and then they totally screwed up the subtitles as far as their accessibility needs are concerned. Moving on, Sabre CEO Matt Karsh still doesn't think embracer criticism is, quote, fair. Finding your voice, how to target the press and influencer with your games. I think we already talked about this. Definitely an article worth checking out if you are going to ever try to promote a game. And then this is just the front page of GameDeveloper.com. How did I end up there? I have no clue. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.